Thank you, Samira. I'm Nick Milne from Ignite Consulting, and I'm going to take you through the latest research on customer experience from the IPA. So positive brand friction, generating growth and value from customer experience. We think, even though customer experience is hard to get right, that now is the right time for marketing to take more of a leadership position with the experience and positioning customer experience as the value and growth engine for the organization. 3 reasons why customer experience is interesting. Firstly, from a C-suite perspective, 48% of the C-suite believe that customer experience is owned by the sales department. This is over 4 times as much as they see marketing leading customer experience, which is 11%. And this is research done by Deloitte Insights back at the end of 2019. Now, if sales are seen to be the leader and owner of experience, then perhaps that suggests that there's an issue with understanding and defining what customer experience is. On the other hand, there's focus. And from a marketing perspective, customer experience is one of the top 3 priorities for CMOs going into 2020, as is driving revenue growth, and the 2 go hand in hand. So marketing have got this opportunity to both redefine what experience is, but also take the leadership around customer experience for the organization. But they have to navigate organizational risk. This is one of the key barriers that marketers see, which is stopping them driving innovation from a marketing point of view. But given COVID-19 in 2020, the resistance to risk has been lowered because organizations have had to change and adapt to survive and now start to grow again. And again, this is research by Gartner at the end of 2019. So this leads us on to 5 key research objectives: redefining and segmenting customer experience, identifying the key tensions restricting growth, clarifying the roles of the brand within creating experience, analysing how best to measure it, and then maximising collaboration. So we spoke to 26 different organisations, having depth interviews with them, from CX consultancies, research agencies, marketing, media, and marketing services agencies, and brands, to understand what are the challenges and what are the opportunities with customer experience. So a big public thank you to each of those who have contributed so far to this report. When we start to redefine experience, there's 4 key themes which stand out: experience segmentation, experience ownership, commercial focus, and experience investment. Customer experience segments into 4 areas: brand experience, customer experience, product and service experience, and employee experience. And when we split it out this way, it becomes clear that actually customer experience is only an element of the overall experience. So we won't talk about the overarching theme across all of this as customer experience anymore. We'll call it experience. So when we start to look at the 4 individual areas, from brand experience to the left to employee experience on the right, we define it as uniquely recognizable moments of positive brand friction across paid and owned touch points, allowing consumers and customers to functionally, effortlessly interact across all touch points during the process by which they purchase or use what the brand has to offer, which is designed and often delivered by the brand's amazing employees, whether that's in HQ, an office, or frontline. But what this also does is it highlights one of the first key tensions, and that's this idea of friction. And there's a great quote here from the Chief Experience Officer from Tribal Worldwide. People talk about frictionless and efficiency, but friction can be good as it's needed for the experience to be noticed. So what do we mean by positive brand friction? Well, we define it as purposefully slowing down the experience in a way which accentuates the brand and positively impacts the experience without making it harder for the customer. And there's 2 examples of this that we heard about. Firstly, in conversation with the CMO at Hotel Chocolat, when we're talking about positive brand friction, got it immediately. This is the moment for Hotel Chocolat when a customer walks into store and their store staff are holding trays of premium chocolate so they can have conversation moments, as they call it, to really highlight the premiumness and the origin of where the cacao comes from. So they can stand out then from the average retailer selling chocolate on the high street. And secondly, evidencing the commercial benefit and value of positive brand friction. And talking to CX Labs and one of their case studies working with National Lottery, where they proved when through the online experience that the more frictionless the experience, the less likely customers were to come back and make a repeat purchase. So then going back to the segmentation, each of the different segments has a different owner. The brand experience being led by marketing, customer experience by operations and channel, product and service by product development and operations, and employee experience by HR. But when we define it this way, it's clear to see that the definitions of experience are around the different departments of the organization rather than around the customer itself. If you were going to design experience from scratch, you'd put it in the eyes of the consumer, not in the eyes of the organization. And if there were two things which really highlight where organizations are able to get it right and not quite so right, it's through experience, agility, and collaboration. And what we're presenting here is a framework which looks at organizational experience collaboration on the x-axis, low collaboration on the left, high collaboration on the right, to organizational agility on the y-axis. So highly agile at the top, not so agile on the bottom. And those brands in the top right-hand quadrant show that they are highly collaborative with an ability to act fast. Those in the bottom left-hand quadrant have low levels of collaboration and are slow to act at both an organizational and at a departmental level. So bringing that to life with a couple of examples. On the top right-hand slide, we have Eve Sleep. And in conversation with the then CMO and now CEO Cheryl Calvley, she was able to give us this example at the beginning of lockdown around their product trial period. This was initially 100 days, but at the beginning of lockdown, when you're about to go into a 10 or 12 week uncertain period, 100 days doesn't feel very long. So they increased the trial period to 200 days within a matter of 2 to 3 days. So highly agile. And because they had a clear view of the brand principles, the brand guidelines of how that plays out across the experiences that they deliver, everyone knew what they were doing. So it's collaborative. The second example is Centrica, which is highly collaborative but not quite so agile. They're going through, or were going through, a transformation process around customer journeys, putting journeys at the heart of the organisation, owned by the Chief Customer Officer and marketing. But on the other hand, it's still taking 10 weeks from when a customer signs up to British Gas for their account to be activated. Because of legacy data systems, it's hard then to tie up the data into communications and clearly communicate through those 10 weeks where the customer is on that journey to activation and what's going to happen next. Experience focus splits between a growth or cost reduction focus, and that's a commercial focus and lens for the organisation. Brand experience owned by marketing has a growth lens. All other elements of experience are focused on cost reduction. And this creates a tension. And there's two quotes which really bring this to life. Firstly, from KPMG, cost reduction is certain, growth is often harder to predict. Versus the second one from L'Oreal, cost cutting is a dead end. Growth is never ending. Marketing has huge experience in understanding how to measure and predict investment, advertising investment, media investment, and the outcomes of that in both the short and the long term. So if growth is harder to predict, then there's more that marketing can bring to the table to bring credibility around the value that customer experience or experience investment is going to give. As differences in experience investment can put marketing in an uncertain position. There's two sources of funding within the organisation. OPEX, which focuses on the more day-to-day operations of the organisation, and CAPEX, which focuses on funding for the products and services that play out over the next couple of years. With marketing sourcing their investment from OPEX, it creates that more uncertain position, particularly when the focus of the organisation can be more determined by the short-term results. OPEX is flexible, CAPEX isn't. So if marketing is going to be the leader for the organisation with the experience, but is then the owner of the more flexible funding, it creates a challenge. So again, that leadership and collaboration is key, that if marketing can show the value that it can bring to the experience table through positive brand friction, it brings more certainty and credibility with the investments they own to drive long-term value and short-term value through experience. So summarising the 4 experience tensions. Experience segmentation. Experience is designed around the parts of the organisation rather than around the customer. Ownership. Owned by different departments, making collaboration more complex and decision-making increasingly difficult. And commercial focus. Tension between different mindsets. Growth versus cost reduction. Effectiveness versus efficiency. And finally, investment. OPEX versus CAPEX. The short term will always win, making longer term growth more difficult. So what do we do about it? Well, firstly, what we've heard is that organisations don't need more data. They need simplification and integration. And what this framework shows you is how all the different elements of customer experience and brand research can come together to join all the silos up of the organisation. So from the top part, the more strategic brand lens, through to into the customer relationship lens, and down to the bottom of the more day-to-day and journey understanding of the experiences across channels, across touch points, across different products, whether they're digital or physical, and then wrapping all of that within the employee experience. And what this should give you, it gives you a framework to be able to start to identify, or an intelligence ecosystem where you can start to say, I know exactly where the priority investments need to make to create the highest value from customer experience, and predicting the outcome from that. So if I invest X, I'm going to get Y. And then it gives you the ability to show across this whole framework how all the individual parts are working to deliver on that experience, and the sum of all the parts collectively giving that outcome value back to the board to say, this is what happened, this is the outcome from it, and this is why. And the why is really important. You need to be able to capture the context behind what is changing and why it's changed, and not just quantify what actually did change. And secondly, on that measurement part of the framework, predictability of what is going to happen is absolutely critical. And what we'd like to do is introduce the concept of excess share of experience, which is a better correlator to market share than excess share of voice. Now, what we have here is a chart which on the x-axis is showing share of voice and share of experience, and on the y-axis is showing share of market. And this is research done by the research agency Mesh. And what it's showing is that for the same brand, the blue dots are share of experience, the pink dots are share of voice, correlating it back up to market share. And it's showing for the same brands, when you look at them for share of experience versus share of market, compared to share of voice, share of market, that share of experience is a better correlator back up to market share. Correlator, not predictor. And that's where we need to get to with excess share of experience. This gives us a great view of where we could start to move to the measurement, but will it replace share of voice? Will it replace more of the traditional customer experience measures? We're not sure yet, but it's got legs, and this is where the next area of our research needs to take us. Understanding the role of share of experience, because it measures experience through the consumer lens rather than the marketer's lens and what they own and what they control. So moving on to prediction, to increase collaboration. And an enterprise-wide approach to experience ownership will increase collaboration. Now, what this is showing us is the 3 stages of moving from the silos of the organisation, and within the left hand, what I'm going to call Rubik's Cube. Each of the different colours represents a different department. So from organising experiences from the silos of the organisation, the middle chart, which is showing that if the experience is designed in this way, then the consumers will find it really hard to navigate through that experience, and they will feel the tension of that experience, and not a positive tension, a negative tension. Whereas if you can create an organisation based around journeys, where there is a journey owner for a particular experience, and then within that journey team sits the relevant parts of all the other departments, whether it's marketing, finance, IT, and legal, then suddenly you are having accountability across the experience from the right people across the organisation, which will then be where value really starts to accelerate. So with that in mind, we need to understand how we can measure experience value. If we can understand which are the right journeys to invest in and create experience value in, we need to understand where are the right moments within that particular journey to create these moments of positive brand friction. And we believe experience value is measured by that difference between positive brand friction and customer effort, multiplied by the number of customers going through that journey or experience, and the frequency of times that they come back to make a repeat purchase or repeat service. And all of that is then divided by the cost of the experience. Now let me take you through an example of that, using a case study from CX Labs work that they did with Virgin Atlantic. Now, the brief that was given to CX Lab was to remove costs from the experience without impacting customer satisfaction. There'd been a couple of traditional research methodologies tried already, which didn't create credibility around the results, around which parts of the experience were to be removed without any impact on the value of that experience to the organisation. So that top-hand line is showing then the parts of the experience in ranked order, from left to right, from high importance down to low importance of the value that it gives the organisation. CX Labs took a different approach, and they immersed themselves in the journey through analysing keystrokes on the e-commerce platform, to listening in on call centre calls as customers made calls, to posing as a passenger and looking at the experiences that people went through, to interviewing cabin crew and looking at listening to audio diaries that customers created. And what this showed was that the least important part of the experience was the head massage element. And so through removing that part of the experience, they were able to save Virgin Atlantic £10 million a year with no impact on customer satisfaction and no impact on load factor. Value came through reducing the cost, which was exactly what the brief was to Virgin Atlantic. So hopefully a clear example there. And finally, in terms of a suggestion of what to look at, is how marketing should have a bigger role as the experience leader and chief experience influencer across the organisation. So two approaches here. Firstly, marketing as the influencer, starting with the elements of the experience that marketing controls and building trust and collaboration. The second approach is seeing marketing as the leader, marketing leading the organisation as it has the vision, the customer and the commercials at its heart. So in conclusion, if there's three things we want you to remember from today, it's these three things. Firstly, this concept of positive brand friction. If this is to be believed to be where growth from customer experience can come from, then it suggests that marketing should be the rightful owner of this and is the right part of the organisation to then collaborate and influence the rest of the organisation to go on to that next stage of using customer experience as a growth and a value engine. Secondly, it's the simplification and interrogation of data. This isn't about creating new data. This is about joining the dots between the data and the insight systems that are already there so that you can clearly tell an organisation where the priority value investments need to be with the experience, how you're going to measure them, and what the predicted outcome is from that. And thirdly, it's the potential opportunities with excess share of voice. Understanding what that can give us as a better prediction onto market share. More to be understood to see how that really plays out, but we think there's a bright future with excess share of experience. Thank you.